It just makes me uncomfortable. I don't care what it's doing.
I think those people just like listening to stuff that's inherently sexual. All right, let's get this show on the road. So, hello and welcome to the inaugural weekly episode of mine and Andrew's gaming podcast. I'm Justin Patterson, and I am completely unqualified to be here. I don't really play video games. I'm one of those people that finds games interesting, but I lack the general motor control and probably also the attention span for video games, which is strange because all my life people have told me that my bad attention span is probably because of video games. It turns out I don't play them, so.
Well, that works out for you. Well, I'm Andrew Hewitt. I do play games, not as much as I used to, but I know a thing or two, probably as much as the average gamer, I guess. And, yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know right now.
Yeah, so, like we said, this is a weekly show. And we're pretty lucky this week to have had such a big thing happen that I was sort of tangentially aware of. But 2 days ago, as we're recording, Nintendo released a new, I guess you'd call it like a press release, to YouTube, about 35 minutes long, about a ton of the stuff that they've got coming up this year.
Right. And they released everything from their new 3DS titles to remakes and, of course, the big Switch games that's coming out later this year. And we're just going to talk about some of the stuff we find interesting and we're looking forward to.
Yeah, so right out of the gate, WarioWare comes back to the DS. 300 micro games. And it feels strange to start this show by announcing that I don't really play video games, which is absolutely the truth. But micro games are like my one weakness because they change so quickly. You know, it reminds me on Steam, I know you and I have actually played this game together, but what is it called?
Move or Die.
Move or Die. Move or Die is this like micro game kind of setup that I think, especially for multiplayer, is like super interesting.
Yeah, it constantly changes up the game modes that you're having to play and try to beat your opponents, and they all last like 20 seconds each. So if you're bad at one, you'll be able to pick it up somewhere else.
And that's mostly where it helps me out because since, like, the main frustration with video games for me is that I'm not particularly good at them. And that's why, I can't immediately pick up, a brand new AAA title because I just don't have the video game skill that most gamers are expected to have at this point in their lives. But WarioWare looks great. It looks like there's a lot of new and different control mechanisms. It looks fun, grotesque at times, but that's all part of the gross out factor works well when you're dealing with games that are, 20 to 30 seconds long.
Right. I know this isn't the first title, and I guess WarioWare, but it just seems really weird to me, but I will probably at least pick it up at some point.
Right. After that, the new Mario Inside Story. I never played the first Mario Inside Story, and I know that Nintendo obviously has a lot of Mario titles, including stuff like Paper Mario, stuff that goes outside the sort of what you would call the official Mario, right?
Right.
There's the arc of Mario, and then off to the side we have stuff like Yoshi's Story and Paper Mario and Mario Inside Story. The only thing here I have about Mario Inside Story, they show a moment during one of the epic boss battles where you play as Bowser, and the scene where the DS is turned sideways and the screen that they're showing this to you on, right?
Right.
The game is on both of the screens, but because the DS hardware is so big, it's still like 60% just plastic DS, and that didn't look very good to me. And I would really hope that the gameplay didn't depend on stuff like that, but probably just a cutscene.
Just the enemy hides right in the middle to where the plastic is.
Oh, it's always the most irritating thing about a DS. Here's the thing that I don't understand about DSs, by the way, while we're just in the middle of this. Why in the world can't the screens meet and why can't they put a better screen in there? I mean, I know that they've got the processing power to be porting these games from like GameCube and stuff like that, but the screens are so bad that it still looks ugly and it makes the motion really sluggish.
Right. My guess is since it's not broken, don't fix it. And everybody likes the bad hardware, so they're just gonna keep it.
I mean, I imagine cost has to have something to do with
Yeah,
it.
I imagine that's probably the main issue. And I know, like, the bottom screen where everybody's, like, touching on it, they have to have some type of special hardware with that. So maybe it's some kind of technical limitation there. They can't really expand on it to make it touch the end of the DS on the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not asking for Retina on the DS. I just, like, I mean, there are touchscreens that look better.
Right.
Like, every phone looks better. And phones aren't that expensive anymore either. So, like, I'm wondering what the limitation is there.
Well, it's
But,
because it's two screens. They have to, like, divide the quality in half.
oh. So, moving on to Detective Pikachu, it's finally coming to America, right? I mean, this is something that was, I think it was officially announced in December
Right.
that Detective Pikachu is coming to North America. And, I think I'm gonna buy it.
Right.
It's something that I really wanted it whenever it came out in Japan, but I had this convenient excuse that I couldn't get it unless I somehow got a bootleg Japanese version, right? And now I have to kind of put my money where my mouth is. Um, of course, there was the really popular Danny DeVito voice acting video where they took clips from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Danny DeVito is speaking and filled in for Detective Pikachu. And when I watched the trailer, I was still expecting Danny DeVito. And the real voice is actually kind of disappointing if that's the kind of voice acting you were expecting, but it does sound quite good.
Okay, so I really didn't know anything about Detective Pikachu going in. And then when I saw the trailer where he was like a gruff voice actor talking to Pikachu, it just really threw me off.
I feel like that's the best part though. Like it separates itself from other Pokemon games and Nintendo games very immediately,
Right.
and not in a way that you can't get used to though. Like, I mean, after you heard the voice, I'm sure, like, I mean, to me it looks very natural that Pikachu with the Sherlock Holmes style hat has
Right.
that voice. Like, it you come into it very naturally after you've heard it, but you're right. Like, they drew a clear line in the sand that this is not going to be another another typical Pokemon title or offshoot.
Right. Which I've never been a huge fan of Pokemon just because I've never had much of a device to play it on. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting title, and I'll probably pick that one up as well. I'll get that over WarioWare, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think just for nostalgia's sake, I'm actually going to put in Detective Pikachu right into the back of my 2DS because I never used the 3DS like capabilities.
Right.
And I'm gonna pull the cover over my head like I did back in school with my Game Boy and play so that the light doesn't shine through where my parents can see. My parents live probably 200 miles away, so they wouldn't see it anyway, but
They'll probably still know. I'd be disappointed in you.
yeah. So, last thing on the handheld stuff. The the original Luigi's Mansion from GameCube is coming to 3DS.
Right.
And this is good because I actually bought the Luigi's Mansion title that came to the DS. I forget, it's something Moon.
Dark Moon?
Dark Moon, that's probably
That's all we'll
right.
go with.
Yeah. And I couldn't help but think about how it was just this visual pointer to this thing that I really missed.
Right.
And so I'm actually really excited for the remake to come, as opposed to the, I don't know, they tried to mobilize it with Dark Moon.
I noticed they said they were going to put like a map on the bottom screen or something. That seems like it would help overall, so you don't have to like flip back and forth as much.
Right, right.
But I don't really know what else you can really do with the bottom screen in that game.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. What do you do with the top screen even? Because these games were originally released when TV aspect ratios were way different than the,
Ooh,
like,
that's a good point.
2-to-1 on the DS, right? Like,
Right. So that's when you turn the screen like sideways, like they did with the Bowser game, and it's just gonna look awful.
yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, that's why these remakes are so much more difficult than I think a lot of people give them credit for. Like,
Hmm.
it does take time and people to dedicate to go through this and make that experience at least as good as it used to be.
Right.
And, in the end, I think it'll be successful. Most of those kind of have been, in my opinion.
Yeah, it seems like Luigi's Mansion always had sort of a cult following with that
Yeah.
little franchise they have going on.
Yeah, and I mean, historically, those non-complicated games that have been remade for the DS and stuff like that, I've liked them. I'm
Yeah,
not saying they're perfect, but they've been fun and really reminiscent of the same title released years before.
yeah, and they really can't go wrong with that kind of thing. I don't think.
Yeah. So that pretty much that wraps up my thoughts on the first, I don't know, third of the Nintendo
Yeah,
event.
something
Do
like
you
that.
have anything?
No, that's pretty much it on my side. I wasn't really into the 3DS titles myself, but they do have some stuff that's coming out that looks pretty good.
Yeah. So, moving on to the Nintendo Switch news. They came out with a whole lot of stuff here at the beginning. I'll name off the first couple that, I mean, they're not very exciting. Okami HD and Sushi Striker. I I mean, I don't want to say that they're not good because first of all, Okami looks phenomenal. I
Right.
love the art style. That's exactly the kind of game that would be able to suck me in visually, except that they have the brush gimmicky thing. It feels gimmicky. It's one of those Nintendo things that
They love their motion controls, and they're always going to push that.
yeah, I mean, and I don't have anything against motion controls specifically. It's more that it feels like they continue to do this thing where they build certain games around it.
Right.
And Okami isn't like developed by Nintendo.
Nah, it's one of Nintendo's like few third-party games.
Yeah, yeah, which we'll get into later because some exciting things are finally happening. But um, and Sushi Striker looks. I mean, it's cute, but
It looks interesting, but it seems like gameplay is going to get kind of still.
it looks like Tetris Attack, and
Okay,
that's a game that you and I played. I mean, it was released 20 years ago. Like
probably.
we played that together on the same screen on the Super Nintendo. A Super Nintendo, which by the way is still sitting under my desk. I haven't completely plugged it all up again. But
There you go. Well, you have a Switch now, so once Direct kind of takes off, then you play all the old, like, Super Nintendo titles, probably.
do they have Tetris Attack on the Switch?
I don't really know if there's anything on the Switch right now, but I'm pretty sure Tetris Attack is going to be at the bottom of their priority list, though.
Well, it shouldn't be. That game was a smash hit.
Speaking of Smash, we'll get to that later.
Oh yeah, it's so bad. Anyway, so after that, two new characters shown for Octopath Traveler. I don't really understand how Octopath Traveler looks any different or exciting from a typical
Final
like
Fantasy RPG type game.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, like a turn-based looking. I don't know. It just doesn't. It seems like a formula. The thing is, though, it's a good formula. I'm sure it'll be a good game. I
yep,
mean, it looks like there are interesting things. Now, they tried to show off a couple of things about the class system.
right.
I mean, I'll call it a class system. But, basically where they were like, yeah, you have one, but also you can have a second one. I'm like, that's not a new idea. That's,
Yes, it is.
I
Nintendo
mean,
said it.
we're not breaking new ground here. But,
Yeah, it does seem to have, like, a decent story, and I'm always one that cares more about a narrative in a game than, say, gameplay. Unless the gameplay is, like, completely awful, then might as well read a book. But,
if you give me a game that's fun to play, I do not care what it looks like, what the story is. Like the main problem for me is finding a game that first of all I'm capable of playing well, and then secondly that that can be interesting and fun to do. Because
Yeah,
most
there's
of the
definitely a
time,
balance. Like, even if it has a great story, if it's like really bad gameplay, then most people aren't going to give it the time of day.
yeah,
But
I mean, there can be deal
right,
breakers, for sure. So after that, we have Travis Strikes Again, which, um,
I didn't know it was trick the first time, honestly.
yeah, I mean, the first one isn't that memorable. This one, I mean, looking at the gameplay, they showed an awful lot of it, which is kind of surprising because it looks like it's less fun, Devil May Cry, right?
Yeah, I was
Like
thinking the same
there's,
thing. Like, it was pretty basic beat 'em up game, it looked like. And
yeah, I mean, it's a beat 'em up, but the fun of beat 'em ups are combos, different ways to attack people. I
right,
mean, this seems like a one button masher.
which they did show some other combos and stuff with it, but I'm skeptical of it at this point.
And now we get to that dreadful part. This must have dragged on for 20 minutes, Andrew. The refined tennis gameplay.
Oh
Did you
yeah,
watch the whole refined tennis gameplay bit?
yeah. I mean, here are my thoughts on that. Like, sure, Mario Tennis. I think there's gonna have two titles in the series with that, and I don't know.
You're talking about like Mario
Mario Tennis. Yeah.
Sports.
Well, yeah, that overall. I think there's gonna
Yeah,
be two tennis titles as well. I know on
yeah,
the Virtual Boy there's a tennis game that was actually uh unplayable, is what people described it as. Mostly because like the
yeah.
Virtual Boy is unplayable, but like
Well, and it'll carve out your retinas.
yeah.
So,
Um, but yeah, the in Nintendo Direct Mario Tennis title, I forgot what it's actually called. It does seem to be a decent game. I like Chain Shop. That's who I'll probably play as if I ever pick up the game. But it just seems like it's gonna be mediocre though.
yeah, I mean, it seems like a decent Mario Sports title. The best of which, obviously, is the Mario Baseball for the GameCube. I mean, that's the epitome of video games, really. um, but I don't know. It looked like a good game, but I could not, for the life of me, understand why so much time was spent on it. I mean, it looked good, but I mean, it's sort of like the stuff with Octopath Traveler. I could not. I don't know who their audience here is because all of those things are things that we've heard of.
Right. They did introduce a few more things. Like I know it's power level where you can do like certain specials if your power meter's full or whatever, but that just seems it's gonna be almost game breaking. Since like they said if you hit it just the right time you can block that kind of stuff, but the way they made it sound is almost impossible. So I don't know how much skill is gonna be involved. It's just like trying to get that meter full so you can KO your opponent immediately.
Yeah, and the racket breaking is um the one area where I'll say like that's a really interesting addition to
Yeah,
this game, right? Like it's pretty phenomenal that they're giving you another way to win, which is that from what I understand, even if you're down on points, you can just break the racket.
yeah,
And I mean, you have extra rackets and stuff, but you run out of rackets, you can't play anymore.
right. So I think it's gonna
I'm
be
just saying, like
interesting.
Donkey Kong, right? Like
Right.
you play as Donkey Kong, you break the racket.
Just hit the ball hard enough and your opponent's rack the ball this way. Just like in Rick.
Yeah, and so to wrap up the tennis stuff, did you catch? It almost felt like watching an Apple event. I don't know if you watch the Apple events at
Sometimes.
WWDC and whatnot. Or well, I mean, you don't watch WWDC; it's a conference, but you get the idea.
Right.
Oh, and one last thing. They said that, and I mean, I immediately thought of Steve Jobs. God rest his soul. But the and one last thing wasn't a brand new device or the follow up console to the Switch. It was the tennis tournament that
Right.
they're gonna have. Yeah.
It's just they devoted a lot of time to that game, and it's I don't know. Seems like that time could have been spent somewhere else.
Yeah, because we're probably coming up on the last 5 minutes of
Right.
the special though, and all of the interesting stuff happened.
Right.
Which is that every time I talk to somebody about the Switch and whether they've played it or not, their first hesitation is, yeah, but there's really only the Nintendo games,
Right.
right? And this was a really exciting moment for that because, I mean, first of all, earlier, just before the tennis, Dark Souls
Of course.
to the Switch, which I'm really glad that third party stuff is coming. But Dark Souls is an interesting choice. I
Yeah,
don't feel like it typically fits in with the Nintendo core. I'm glad they're branching out. Also, it's kind of a game from, geez, how many years ago was it now? Like,
2013, 2014.
but yeah, so Dark Souls with this Solaire amiibo.
I don't get amiibos. That whole concept just seems so weird to me. I know it's a cash grab. I get why they do it, but I don't know. But at least, like you said, they are branching out. I always see Nintendo consoles more like family type entertainment systems. So Dark Souls, I guess, is trying to reach out to other demographics with that.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some other interesting things too, because, like you said about Nintendo, when I think of PlayStation or Sony, I think of really great single player stories.
Right.
Right? And Xbox is kind of, I mean, I know this isn't strictly true, but it seems like the multiplayer console, right?
Yeah, that seems the sort of vibe I get from those two. Would definitely be single player versus multiplayer, what more you're looking for.
Right. And the Switch, I mean, it's mostly it's a family fun, and it's very gameplay centered. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
definitely.
Like Nintendo has always been devoted to their controllers and messing them up when they can.
They definitely lead innovation, but not always in that way.
Yeah, like hardware innovation that does not increase performance of the machine at all.
Right. So I guess some of the other ports they talked about, we mentioned Okami before, Undertale's coming, and then my favorite is Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. So I don't have a PlayStation, I haven't been able to play that yet, so I've been waiting for this for over a year now, or close to a year. So Insane Trilogy, they announced that it was going to come to other platforms, like probably fall of last year, and it's currently in March of the following year. So I thought they were just going to drop it and they weren't going to port it, so I'm glad to see that it's actually going to come over, finally.
Yeah, September to March seems like a normal standard deviation
Right.
on time schedules. So. Yeah, the Crash Bandicoot trilogy is exciting for me too. It's another one of those huge reminders that Naughty Dog is a spectacular studio with a spectacular history.
Right.
And,
And it shows that remakes can be done correctly, and they're not always just a big crash grab for companies trying to rehash the same
a
things
big
they've already
crash grab.
done. I thought I was going to be the one that makes sense, but go ahead with yours.
That is something worth mentioning, though. It looks like some work was actually done on this remake. They didn't just smooth out the polygons or whatever. Crash looks a little more cartoony.
Right?
Like, the hair is more responsive. There's certainly more of it.
Mm-hmm.
He looks a little bit wilder than he used to.
Yeah, there was only like 2 pixels in the old version, so they have more to work with now.
You really couldn't tell Crash and Lara Croft apart on the original console they were releasing.
They use the same texture package.
Yeah. They have one texture pack. It was called RGB. You said the values. But after that, Little Nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
Little Nightmares is one of those games that I think looks really good.
It reminds me a lot of Limbo. If you played that game before. So it was
Yeah.
like more 3D environment, I guess. 2.5D, I guess.
I think Little Nightmares was it was an indie PC release, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And there have been a lot of these that I think, like, the cinematography is phenomenal, but they always seem like they play a little bit slow and like there's a ton of empty space.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know that will necessarily be true with this one. I never played it on the PC to be honest with you, but I mean it looks great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another kind of game. It seems more like a psychological horror type game, and that's not something you really see on Nintendo titles much. So they're at least branching out, for better or worse.
I mean, in true Nintendo form, though, it is a bit cutesy,
Yeah.
psychological horror. And I guess that leads us up to the most surprising announcement of all of it, which is the new South Park being ported.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's
I don't
strange.
know how to feel about that.
I don't either. Like, as we said before, they're definitely doing different demographics, but that seems like an odd choice to port over to the Switch already. But I guess it's popular. I'm not real sure. It seems like it had decent reviews, but it's definitely not my type of game. So,
The thing is, I'm actually a really immature adult that sometimes enjoys watching South Park. I can admit that about myself.
mm-hmm.
I'm trash. But and I played the first South Park video game release, The Stick of Truth, and it's phenomenal. Honestly, I don't know why I haven't gotten around to playing Fractured But Whole, which is exactly how the Nintendo announcer announced it. I don't know if you could tell,
Right.
but they were stressing the gap between butt and hole so strongly. It felt like you could have heard a pin drop. There was 30 seconds between butt and hole. But yeah, so I played Stick of Truth. Incredible game as far as gameplay goes, which is what I'm mostly concerned with. Now, obviously, it's incredibly vulgar and really shouldn't be played by anyone. Which the same as I'll assume that for the Nintendo too. It just feels weird. I don't remember having a vulgar title for, and I mean this is my own memory, not Nintendo, but I can't remember a single vulgar title for a Nintendo console since the 64.
What would that be?
Well, I mean, of course, Conquer was back then.
Oh yeah, I've seen enough about that game to know what that's about.
But there's also, I want to say, hold on, let me do a quick web search before I stick my foot in my mouth. I remember, this is how, man, it was really a different time, Andrew. I remember sitting next to my Nintendo 64 with a magazine that was actually printed with video game ads in it, thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice if I could go to the store whenever this game is released and pick it up? But
Putting an age on ourselves, I know.
yeah,
We're not that old though, right? But yeah, it's definitely a different title than I was expecting. And I was really interested to see what type of gameplay they were going to show for this, and they definitely kept it G-rated to PG maybe.
Okay, so embarrassingly enough, people can correct me if they want to embarrass themselves by knowing the history about this, but Leisure Suit Larry, I think, had a Nintendo 64 release, which I remember seeing the full page ad for in some magazine from way back, but never played it, obviously, because I was way too young at the time. But yeah, and that for me pretty much rounded off the Nintendo stuff. I guess the only super notable thing that happened after that was the Splatoon stuff, which I detest. So if you want to go ahead and walk us through that.
Alright, so Splatoon was released, I believe, on the Wii U first, or was it on the original Wii? I want to say
Wii U.
You're right.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty popular game. It does seem a bit weird to me. I've never played it myself, so I can't say much about the quality of it.
We sound like crotchety old men.
Well, that's
Andrew,
pretty much
we've
what
been
we
talking
are.
about our magazines and how we haven't played Splatoon, but we hate it. I can't help it, because it looks, in every place that I've seen the gameplay, it may not feel this way when you're playing it, but every time I see video of it, it looks like it's being, like everyone is running through molasses. It looks like the slowest playing shooter I've ever seen.
Well, it might be more of our speed since we're like that at first-person shooters, so who knows? Maybe we'll like
Well,
it.
the problem is, these kids, they're better at being slow than I am, too.
Fair enough. Well, the thing about what they announced at the Nintendo Direct was that it's a DLC to Splatoon 2, which is a single-player expansion. And apparently it's going to expand on the world of Splatoon and give more of a backstory to all the characters that's involved with the franchise.
Yeah,
So,
I believe it said deep lore.
right?
There's going to be some deep lore on the paintball game.
That seems a little
it
harsh,
seems
but
comical. I know I'm being harsh, but if it just seems like if there were ever a place for this kind of thing, I don't see it on Splatoon. Out of all of the titles that they gave, I'd rather see more about Travis Strikes Back, to
Would
be
you
honest with
really?
you. No,
Okay.
it's not true. It looks awful.
I mean, if they're gonna release DLC, people that actually play it, they're probably gonna target the younger demographic where the kids
Yeah.
are gonna get their parents to pay for it.
That's true. And the one interesting thing, or the one thing that I found interesting about this DLC, I mean, obviously tons of people are going to love it. Tons of people our age are going to love it.
Right.
And we'll be left in the dust, wondering why no one likes us. But I will say, it looked like the single player stuff was going to be kind of fun. Said something like 60-ish puzzles, I could
Right.
be wrong. But I mean, I mean, because of the main mechanic and the puzzle room aspect, it feels very Portal to me.
Wow, that's surprising. It's one of your favorite games.
Yeah, and for something to get the Portal seal of approval from me is a big deal because you remember when Valve made games?
Why would they now, though? Steam is such a huge
I
cow for
know,
them.
I
There's
know.
no proof. They killed Half-Life 3 officially, too. I mean, that would be pain for everybody. But we all knew from it for a while now.
Yeah, so after the Splatoon 3, or the Splatoon
Two,
3, the Splatoon 2, Splatoon, listen to me. Anyway, after the Splatoon 2 DLC announcement, there was this weird bit of running with the old characters, which I found really strange because they've been the octopus people. I forget what they're called.
I mean,
But,
they're squid, but that's just,
whatever. Um, so then they've got one of the normals and I was like, you know, what new thing are they going to introduce to multiplayer? Because it's largely a multiplayer game in the first place.
right.
Turns out they're adding them to Smash.
Man, everybody's favorite. The game I've only played like twice, so if they ruined my game, they're quit.
The difference with this and Splatoon, though, is that I've played Smash, don't like it. I think of the fighting games, it's one of the most fun.
Right.
Because it's the least focused on balance. Like so many fighting games try so hard to make every character the same that's annoying. No, some people should just be better.
They definitely have variety. You can't blame Nintendo for that.
No, and I don't like Smash, but like you can't ignore that it's incredibly successful and that it is fun to play even when I'm losing.
Yeah, since I've never really played it a whole lot, I definitely want to get this one and try to get good for once. Will I? Probably not, but I look forward to it.
Yeah, and it'll be the perfect time to kind of like try to reacquaint yourself with Splatoon. You can really get a feel for the deep lore of this character that they're adding to Smash. That's such an interesting way to release that information too. Like you're gonna get the lore on um on some Splatoon with this girl who has no memories, and then Smash.
I mean, like, everybody probably lost hope at that point, and then they just dropped that bombshell.
So after the Smash stuff, it was, I say pretty much over, but it was over. It was kind of fade to black after that.
All right.
Um, Now I just want to talk about stuff that you feel like they left out. Did you think that there was anything that should have been coming to Nintendo that they should be talking about that isn't there?
Probably the only thing I was thinking they might announce was some type of new Mario game that was more like the new Super Mario Brothers, or it's more like a 2D environment. And they haven't released anything like that on the Switch yet, so that's kind of surprising. But they did have Mario Odyssey. That was like one of their big launch titles, close to launch. So I guess that's supposed to tie forward for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think the 3D Marios are in general better. And I have felt that way since 64. Galaxy was obviously really good.
Right.
Galaxy 2 was just as good. They just keep making good 3D Marios.
Definitely.
But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, if that same one that got, because didn't they? So they did it for Wii, was the 2.5D
Right.
thing. Then they brought that over to the Wii U. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the only 2.5D Mario that makes it to the Switch.
Right. Yeah, even if they just port those ones over, I think a lot of people will probably be satisfied with that, because I'd say the 3D Mario's have more popularity at this point, and I do think they're better myself.
Yeah, and speaking of like 2.5D, whatever you want to call it, Mario games, really, I was really hoping that the new Yoshi game would get some attention, which hasn't really been mentioned since E3. Which is funny because Detective Pikachu, right, which has been a game for years now
Right.
on the 3DS, is coming to North America. They made a video about that in December, and then they also included several minutes about it in the Direct video, but nothing on the Yoshi, which they have been ignoring since E3. So I hope that doesn't mean trouble. It was originally announced just for 2018. It could be that they just don't have enough of it ready.
That, or they just had to cut out more time for the Mario Tennis because that's
Yeah, no, they had to take all of the people that were developing Yoshi and have them edit the 3 hours of video that they have explaining the new Mario Tennis.
Yeah. So, was there any other titles you was looking at besides Yoshi?
No, honestly, I know that we just spent the last half hour or whatever kind of riffing about Nintendo stuff, but actually I feel like both of us are primarily not Nintendo people.
Definitely.
So, yeah, so don't worry people, there's more to come, especially in the future that is not Nintendo. But they just had their event, so we had to get in there. We're going to lose all the Nintendo people right off anyway because of those Splatoon comments.
Yeah, we didn't really. And Mario Tennis, the same thing. I don't really know what we said that's going to make people happy.
Are there diehard Mario Tennis fans?
I mean, there has to be some, right?
Yeah, but I mean, are they also people that are already fans of real world tennis?
I mean, there's no real thing in real life. I think they're all fighting on it.
Just kind of watch it go back and forth. The Mario game turns out not that different.
Yeah, but you can't do super moves and people are active. They change off.
Yeah. Oh, one final thought. I know we're way past it, but on the Mario Tennis, they have the motion controls. Really impressed with the Well, I won't say impressed because it's been several years, but I did enjoy seeing the difference in how articulated the motion controls are now compared to back on the original Wii with Wii Tennis.
Right. Which I will say, that was really innovative back then with how successful the Wii was, with how limited the technology was. It was still pretty good. They've definitely come a long way in the past, what, 15 years? It's not even 15 years, has it?
I don't think it's been 15. Good lord.
Yeah, probably more of 10-ish.
Yeah, 10-ish. Oh, so on to tonight's main topic. We're talking about why games cost so much anyway. Why do they cost so many monies? You actually sent me a link to a really great extra credits video on YouTube.
Right.
That also pretty timely. Came out I almost said last month, but it's March. It came out in late January. Really good extra credits video on the cost of games, how that kind of stuff is changing, and they actually they I don't know, extra credits released another video, the episode immediately after, kind of clarifying some things on what games cost to produce.
Right.
But basically, I think if I can summarize here, the theory is that the microtransactions, loot boxes, day one DLC, all of these things that we find so frustrating are really a way to compensate for the price of AAA games. And I mean, they haven't changed since 2005,
right,
according to the video, right? So not changing the cost means that they have to make that money some other way, right? Because of inflation and because of what we pay developers and things like that.
Overall cost of video games have skyrocketed in the past decade.
Right, and I mean, there's certainly an argument for the overall purchasing market for video games growing too, but I mean, who knows? That may all come out in a wash. But what we do know is that they're more expensive to make, and certainly these big studios don't want to take a hit to the bottom line, so they add things like microtransactions, loot boxes, and day one DLC, which to us feels like an unfinished game or a game that we purchased that isn't complete in some way,
Right.
or that we don't have full access to.
And we're just having to pay through different types of paywalls to get to the full content.
Right, and so obviously there are going to be some people with fancy like jobs and stuff that'll say just crank that price up. But I mean, we're talking about possibly between $70 and $100 for a typical AAA studio release,
Right.
and that feels like too much to me.
And to me too, even after watching the video, thinking of paying like 80 or even $100 for one single game seems like a lot of money. Even if you end up spending more on that DLC, just putting that all in the front end cost seems like a lot of money. And I don't think a lot of people will do that.
And I think that more than anything, my own feelings and everyone else's feelings has to do with what we're trained to pay for these games, right?
Right.
Like, even $80 to $100, I mean, like, when we go to buy a Blu-ray release of a movie, right, we're certainly paying a lot less, but consider the heightened amount of, like, director attention, animation, storyboarding, somehow finding a way to involve the player, and then even like just the nitty gritty mechanics.
Right.
How much more stuff you're putting into a game than for a movie, and we won't pay more than $40 extra for that.
Right. And something else about games too is that just like a movie, you'll get say like 2 hours of entertainment, like more if you rewatch it. But a video game typically is like I don't know, 30
40,
hours.
60
Yeah,
hours? Yeah.
depending on how massive the game is. And I think we should be willing to pay a bit more for that much more entertainment, especially since games have a lot more replay value than say rewatching a movie. So it seems like logically we should be willing to pay more, but there's just such this ingrained mentality of $60 for a game. I don't see that changing in the near future.
Yeah, everyone has a library of games now.
Right.
You know, it's something that you get, you play your 30 hours or whatever, you put it on the shelf, and you might buy, 30 games in a given year. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, with if the cost of games go up, I would expect to see people buying fewer and fewer, really spending time on the good ones that they buy.
Right.
And I'm wondering if the culture is ready for that.
I think it's helping with all these indie titles coming up, especially on like the Steam library. Like there is that side where like people are willing to pay less money for like shorter, smaller, developed games. But on the AAA side, you can't just tell them to spend less money. That's going to cut down your costs, so we don't spend as much. Because studios are always competing with each other. They're not all going to decide to lower the cost and make lower quality games. So
Well, right, and we wouldn't want them to.
right,
Like, I mean, I know that I want the game to be cheaper, but not at a cost that I notice.
right. And at this point, like if they try to go lower on say like visual design, it's going to be very noticeable. Because we've
Yeah, and
passed the point of like the uncanny valley in a lot of ways. So cutting back much is going to be very noticeable.
no, exactly. I feel exactly the same. And while I'm not someone who focuses a lot of their attention on the graphics of a particular game, I mean, there's like I have a good enough line.
Right.
And much past that, I don't think about it very much, but I like things to look better if they can look better. Why shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
they? And that's just it's one of those. It's going to be really difficult moving forward because what I don't. I think you and I are both on the same side of the fence here. If they asked me to pay more money for the game that I wanted or deal with microtransactions, loot boxes, and season passes, I would much rather pay more for the game up front.
Right. But that's, I think about loot boxes, that could be a whole discussion for another day because it's more like there's a gambling side that people have a problem with since like you're paying a lot of money and you may not get the item that you're wanting. And there's also the debate about like if it's dangerous to children if they're spending like a lot of money and even people that have like gambling compulsions, like if that should be like displayed on the product to begin with, saying like this product is has types of gambling with it or something, sort of like how it is
Mm-hmm.
like there's tobacco, sexual references, that kind of thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think to an extent it probably should be. I don't see how it's going to hurt.
I mean, the question is, would that kind of rating stop anybody who shouldn't have, or, stop somebody who should have these games from getting them?
Right.
And I don't think, I mean, when we're looking at most stuff with loot boxes, it's not necessarily kid stuff.
Right. That's a very good point. Like the rating system as it stands right now, doesn't really stop parents from getting their kids like mature games that's supposed to be played by 17 and over adults. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's just sort of where we're at right now. I think it's mostly on the parents' side that issue, and they need to stop buying their kids these types of games and then complain about their kids spending all this kind of money. But I mean, that's also an issue in mobile games as it is. Like even kids games have microtransactions on the App Store, so it's a problem across the board.
I think an important thing to note is that these microtransactions aren't just bad for children. Obviously,
Definitely.
adults can be irresponsible too. And the thing is it's not just that kids don't understand the value of money, and so that they're spending all this money. That could very well be part of it, but these games prey on human nature,
Right.
right? Like, it does feel good to spend the money on this loot box and get the thing that you're looking for. And there's a little bit of that rush before the thing opens,
Mm-hmm.
that you can definitely go looking for. But I feel kind of like you. It seems like for no particular reason, the system is randomized. I can't just buy the thing for some reason that
Right.
they made up. Like this is a fabricated thing.
Yep.
Like, it's not for gambling. The main purpose is to buy an item, but we're buying items with lottery tickets now.
Right. You're buying for the chance to get the
Yeah,
item.
yeah. And that feels very wrong to me in a digital world where the resources are unlimited and I
Right.
could just there's no real reason that I shouldn't be able to purchase the thing. I know that loot systems can feel rewarding, but especially when you're putting money in, not just your time,
Right.
it's very different. I mean, of course, everybody will remember the EA comments about really wanting their players to feel that sense of achievement.
To the pride and
Um,
accomplishment.
yeah, that's what we could. I mean, I'll try to find the original Reddit comment and put it in here, but
Right.
it's garbage. It's garbage. There's loot boxes are good for no one, except if you're a studio trying to make your money back.
Right. And it's obviously not working. Like it could be working in the short run for video game studios, but people are getting fed up with it. And if something doesn't change, we could see some type of either legal issue if like Congress would get involved because there is talks of that right now. And I don't think anybody really wants Congress. I don't know, but
I think
about
that's
the
probably the worst
right,
solution. Is a group of 90-year-old white men who think of video games still as Pac-Man,
right.
deciding how the system should work.
And I think that's what we need to avoid. But if a solution's not found quickly, I think that might be where we get to.
Right. I mean, obviously we'd rather handle it on this side of things. And I think, going back to trying to think of those costs, I mean, we've been talking now about some ways that they try to compensate for that with the loot boxes and stuff. Something that I've been giving a little bit of thought to is the way we pay developers in the gaming industry. Because if you didn't know, they're quite well paid.
Right.
Because they do work very, very well and under time pressure and stuff like that. But it's interesting to me because I don't know. I mean, we could probably find some statistics on graduation rates of kids with degrees for essentially game design, right?
Right.
And what everyone will tell every kid that says that they're going to school to learn how to do that is that, oh, everybody wants to do that. It's going to be hard to get a job because there are just so few of those jobs available.
Right.
What I'm wondering though is obviously the demand for games is increasing.
Right.
We've got more people playing games and different kind of games than ever. We have a higher influx of developers now, and we could argue about how capable they are, but I could see possibly a reasonable future being that people who develop games just aren't paid as much anymore because it's a really desirable job, and now a lot of people can do it.
Yeah, especially now where like it's getting, like you said, easier and easier to design games. You can start on like the mobile market, and it's just with anything in these types of fields. It's like sort of the entertainment industry in general is when a lot of people want to get into it, but it's all based on popularity. And for that fact alone, there's going to be few people that can really succeed in it in the long run.
Right. But tell me your all-time favorite developer. Like I couldn't name one.
I
I
mean,
mean, maybe a team of them for sure,
right,
like Bethesda or something like that. But like, there's not anybody that's not really in a leadership position.
definitely, because they all sort of come in and out of the market. It's pretty competitive, for lack of a better word. People come and go. Because think of like THQ, because like they were probably one of the biggest game designers back 10, 15 years ago, and now I'm pretty sure it's bankrupt. So that's just sort of how it is with popularity.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know anything about this, but and I certainly don't want to isolate any developers that listen to the show, but I don't know like how developing games has changed will impact cost either, because a lot of the really hard work, the dirty work, from making games earlier in our time, isn't there anymore. I mean, we have engines now that you can build stuff on. There's like, if you're running high-end video, of course you have to pay to license these types of things, but
You don't have to build everything from scratch.
yeah, I mean, a company is now paying another company to do that stuff instead of you.
Right.
So, it seems like less responsibility is being left to developers in certain respects. Probably not in an important way, but I thought it was worth mentioning. And also, we've got way more developers. We have way more demand for games. It just seems like I've been waiting for this explosion to happen, and for some reason, it hasn't.
Right. And it just seems like something's got to give overall. Like the gaming fans, they're kind of fed up with all this microtransaction mess, and then video game designers, they're not going to take a pay cut. Publishers aren't going to take a pay cut. So something's going to give in the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, I imagine. Unless something
Wow.
kind of shifts. That's just
See,
my
in 3 or
prediction.
4 years, I just see a more sophisticated microtransaction system.
And that's most likely what we're going to lead to. Is like, I don't see any dramatic shifts happening. Like people are going to stop doing microtransactions. Like even if like a huge part of the gaming culture decide we're boycotting it, there's going to be enough people that still are going to purchase microtransaction DLC for it to be viable for developers to implement.
And I mean, I'm a person that I don't like because I do this thing where if I am playing a game on the rare occasion, I mean, it's been probably a little over half an hour ago, I told everybody I don't play games, and I talked about all the games that I play. But I really don't. But if I do sit down with a game, and it has buyable DLC, I buy it. And it's not always worth it, but
Right.
I mean, I think gamers in general they tend to be completionists, and you bought the game, it's not as much money to finish the game,
Right.
so
And
sunk cost.
I think a lot of people are willing to buy DLC because again they really like it. I think it's really well implemented. But I think that they get really mad is when it feels like part of the game is cut and they're just adding it to it. Like if it's actually just extra content, most people have a problem with that. But it's sort of not the case with that anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, like Dark Souls did a phenomenal job with this. And I mentioned that because supposedly it's coming to the Switch.
Yeah,
Yay. Um, but the DLC for Dark Souls felt substantial. It introduced a boss battle that everybody talked about for ages afterwards. And I mean that's the way to do it whenever you're if you're asking $20 to $30 more, then do $20 to $30 more game, and you're still going to make better money on it because it took you less time to develop. You're not doing any storyboard, or well, I won't say any story, but you're not completely starting from scratch. You've
Right.
got all of these assets already made.
Yeah. So, and another problem I had personally, like day one DLC, it's like the DLC is pretty much ready by the time launch happened, and they just cut it out from the game. Because I know Mass Effect 3 did that with I forgot the name of it, but that was a big deal with a lot of people. One of the reasons Mass Effect 3 was very disappointed with some of the fans was just like the day one DLC and the game ending was awful. And I can't really think of a good excuse to why you'd have day one DLC. Can you?
I can see why.
Okay.
I can see why people rebel against it, though. I mean, if we're talking about a 40-hour game and EA cuts the last 10 hours of it and puts a price tag on it, then obviously that's a problem.
Right.
But if you develop 60 hours of gameplay and some of that, which is non-integral to the story, that some people won't be interested in, you cut off, and you sell it as day one DLC, I think that's fine. Because I think that the argument that these publishers need to be making is that, hey, this is stuff that not everybody's going to be invested in, and so they don't have to pay for it. This would have been a $70 or $80 game if we included it. But now it's only a $70 or $80 game if you want the thing. But you still have this whole game, right?
Okay. That's a fair argument.
But yeah, I mean, like being able to use certain weapons and stuff like that, like that's garbage. That's no good. It's a no good, boss.
I know a lot of games are Mass Effect. I just thought Mass Effect was bad since that's what I played a lot when it came out. Was that they released like 5 or 6 different DLC packs that each had like 3 different weapons. When it just seemed like a lot of money for something with emotional value.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I never understood the first person shooter world in the first place. I'm not very good at them. And that's probably why I never continued, because I like to take my ball and go home. But
Right.
and it just seemed like, now people are buying these great guns, and so I will never get into the first person shooter world, just because, I mean, even if I wanted to, everyone else bought the day one gun pack.
Right.
And now they're gonna shoot me full of holes.
Yeah, that's another what they call pay to win issues of like I know on the mobile market where it's sort of competitive, like people will pay like a lot of money just to get ahead and have superior weapons or armor or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it really separates the community because the people that's paying to essentially be on top, then the people that's just doing it free, they really can't get ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, like if you read the reviews for any of those applications, what you find is that everyone is griping about the pay to win issue, but the developers don't have to listen because their target audience is throwing a bunch of money at them and not complaining at them in their review section. So
yeah, there's really no incentive for them to change anything that's working.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the main question is this just a short-term problem, or do you see this as more of a long-term issue if people don't just accept the way the things are, the way the things that are happening right now?
I think it historically, like, it already has been a long-term issue.
Right.
As far as the resolution of it, it's a little bit tricky because if this movement, if you could call it that, had enough momentum, then I think it would have already been fixed. I mean, who hasn't heard tons about this already without listening to us? But it's always interesting to me to see how this stuff plays out. Like, what is going to catch their attention? I'm not sure. And it may take government involvement, and it may make all of our games worse forever. But
Right.
I think, on mobile platforms, I've kind of come to accept it. It's whatever. And you know why I accept it? Because those games are literally free.
Right.
So when they tell me I have to pay to win, I'm like, oh, I see. This game has an associated cost. But, these actual true blue video games, they already have the upfront cost. And, Upfront pricing is disappearing from all other kinds of software too. So many software pricing models are moving towards like a subscription type service,
Right.
or you see it with DLC season passes and stuff too, and it's not very satisfying to the gamer because we feel like we want access to those things forever and ever, amen. I want to
Mhm.
put my hard disk copy of Splatoon or whatever on the shelf so that whenever I want to play Splatoon, then darn it, I'm gonna be able to do it. And the thing about subscription based stuff is that they don't always have to continue to support old software. And I don't think it's impossible that the gaming industry wouldn't move the same direction.
Right. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you too. And another question I've been thinking about is like, is this movement among gamers to like this hate for microtransaction loot box, is it strong enough for game developers to really take notice?
I mean, does it matter? People have been griping about EA since, like I I don't remember the first time I heard the comment about them releasing essentially the same Madden every year
Hmm.
or whatever, but I mean, that's been going on forever, and EA is as crooked as ever.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel too. Like, I do want things to change, but at the same time, I don't really have a great answer about how it should. And I'm becoming more sympathetic with game developers. Like, the costs are going up. There's really not much they can do except to implement these kind of loot boxes and things of that nature.
Hmm.
So, if things stay the way they are, then I guess I'm satisfied with that result as long as Congress or some legal action does take place. I think that's, as you said, the worst case scenario. But it would be better if we had some other type of resolution that makes everybody happy if that would come about.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm not saying that the subscription model is perfect, but even though there's a lot of grumbling about it with things like Adobe's professional suite of software tools and stuff like that,
Right.
I have found it to be better for me. Um, the thing is, like, if you're going to use the cutting edge of stuff, and I mean, obviously we don't, if you can hear the audio quality here, but if you are going to use that kind of stuff, I mean, you're probably going to want to update every time anyway. So you're hitting this associated cost. It's just up front. And with the subscription model, I'm never afraid that my tools that I'm using are just going to be, unplugged, and then I've spent all of this money for nothing and I have to search for a brand new tool. I mean, it's kind of whenever you're paying them consistently, it feels like a guarantee that you're being supported. Because, hey,
Right.
I give you money, you support my thing, and you fix my thing. And there's really, I
And you
mean,
can like get out at any time, essentially.
yeah, and is there any incentive to do that in the gaming industry right now? Is there any real incentive to fix major bugs?
No. Like, sure, you'll get some public backlash if like there's some game breaking bugs, but essentially that's only found when everybody's bought the game. So it really doesn't matter to them unless they're looking at a sequel.
Yeah.
And even then, they don't care that much.
But and I mean, there are already subscription pricing models for video games, World of Warcraft and stuff like that. I don't find those particularly satisfying, and it's probably because, I mean, do we really want to subscribe for things that are 40 hours long?
Probably not.
And it's that's why this is such a complicated problem, because it's not like anything else.
Right. I mean, I guess sort of like Netflix is the subscription base, but that's about the best comparison I can think of, and that's going to be my great one.
Right, and I mean, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna have stuff like the EA channel instead of HBO? And is
Right.
like, do we pay access for EA games and stuff like that? Because that seems a little
That sort of,
heavy-handed too. It seems like everything's in.
that actually already exists. EA Access, they're like, they have a large library of their games that you can pay like $10 a month or something, and you get access to like all their games you can download.
You are freaking kidding me. Well,
I've not messed with it a whole lot myself, but it does exist in some form,
oh,
and that's where we are.
well, on that bombshell. be sure to tune in next week on the name of this podcast.
Don't worry, Smash is coming out. It'll be okay now. And log in. So, log in. There we go.
Be sure to find us on the Twitter and yeah, all that stuff. We'll drop the information in the place where you find it. I'll probably crudely edit it in here. Okay.
Hey,
so
stop recording.
No, keep recording. So just now the theme played, and here's the part where the people that are still hanging on find out that this is the after show. So if you're just in it for the video game stuff, then you can always delete the show after you've listened to the main show. But in the after show, Andrew and I just kind of catch up every week and talk about important stuff in our lives that aren't games. We talk about all that stuff we're doing while we're not playing the games that we should be playing. So,
all right.
So how you been?
How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm so tired, Andrew. I'm so tired.
Yeah, same here. Spring break was this past week, and I really don't.
Oh yeah, because you got graduate school.
Yeah,
graduate.
See, that doesn't.
Andrew's a graduate. Oh, I feel like I don't think we actually physically sound a lot older than we are, but I feel like all the old man talk is really put down when you find out you're a grad student.
Yeah, spring break. Just mostly hung out, do nothing. It was great.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh man, I travel a lot for work, so I traveled and I worked. Yeah. And then I came home, and my wife is at a literature conference this weekend, so it's just been me and the puppers.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the name of your two dogs? For the audience.
Well, we've got Grace or Goose or really any name that starts with a G. I'll include a photo, and our big dog Vanna. So they're pretty great, but they get a little wild. So anyway, I've been I've been repairing my car, Andrew.
How's it working out?
Well, what happened was, it's a delicate scenario because I was running late for work.
Okay.
And I started the car, and then I came back inside, and then I went back outside, and realized that I had locked the keys in it with the engine.
Ooh.
So there's like a locksmith that's relatively close, but I mean I was gonna be late, right? And the boss is already hounding me about stuff like that, so I decided that it was cheaper and faster to break the small window in front of the main. I mean, it's like a $30 part, so I'm waiting on that. But yeah, I just kind of broke it in and unlocked my door.
You know, that's not a bad ending to this story. See, your boss was happy. He was at work. He didn't waste all the gas. He didn't spend any more on so.
See, this is the kind of encouragement I needed, because
I used to see your wife come home. I was like, why is the window broken?
Yeah, no. She took it with a certain amount of grace and a certain amount of laughing hysterically at me.
That just seems like a perfect solution to come up with.
Yeah. Oh. I have to say, auto glass way stronger than it looks. It was a very awkward several minutes.
Please tell me you just kind of touched it.
No. We have the technology, and use the hammer.
So you beat a computer with it?